Welcome to the tutorial section for BI Validator in the DataOps suite. In this tutorial, we're going to go through the basics of performing basic regression through different BI tool reports, and of course, how we can pull data sets, the visual representations of the graphics, graphs, map data, and other visual elements from these BI reports as well. Of course, the first thing that we want to discuss is the connection to these BI reports. The defined connection is quite straightforward. All you have to do is get into add data sources, then get into BI reports and choose the BI tool of your question. In case of Power BI, you get an option between a master user and a service principal. The main distinction between the two is that a service principal plays a role of a super admin, where you can deploy different specific set of users as groups and then deploy each test case while impersonating a different user group. A master user, in contrast, emulates or implements the use case of a single user. What this means is that if you choose a particular account as a master user, then the application, in this case DataOps Suite, will have the same access as the user, implying that in this case, if Shubhanshu's access to specific reports is restricted to just the APAC region, the same will be true for the application as well. Of course, if you want to counter this from a different perspective, you can always use service principal. From a Tableau standpoint, all you need are the similar set of credentials. But if you're working with an SSO system and other sets of systems, you might need additional web login steps. These are Selenium steps, and you don't have to define them yourself. All you need to do is get in touch with the DataOps support team, and they will give you a command file that you just have to import within your application. As an illustrative source, I would like to showcase the Power BI and Tableau connections, the ones that you will get in your sandbox system. Once you've defined your connection, feel free to test and retrieve the metadata for this connection so that you don't have to do them while you're creating your specific test cases. Now let's jump directly into regression. As you see in the sandbox, you get a good amount of regression tests built into the application, but I'm going to create a brand new one just to illustrate the point for the system. Followed by regression. Let's start with Power BI and then let's get into Tableau. So once again, regression here, the main business objective is that you have two sets of reports and you want to visually validate each and every element between them. So this implies positioning of visuals, colored legends, the exact data sets, the exact metrics, and how the report looks. A PDF to PDF comparison is what we're trying to achieve here. So of course, when you're going in a production system, you can have different connections, but since we are in a sandbox system, we'll have just 2 connections to start with. And for the sake of the video, I'll increase the opacity to 0.5. This will be noted much better once the actual system starts. As you see, the session has already started once you've defined our system. And now the only workspace that this particular account in the sandbox has access to is called sandbox. In your production system, you will have access to multiple workspaces. And in this case, I'm just going to choose a curated example, one of a dev report and the other of a production report. As you see, the application actually connects to the Power BI engine directly and renders this report in real time. This is not the application running the queries in backend and then creating this report. This is the Power BI output itself. That's a key pointer here. We do not connect to the source of the Power BI report. We connect to the Power BI system itself. So if you apply any kind of bookmark filters, or in Tableau, if you apply any kind of very specific systems, you can be assured that the application is actually pulling the data sets that the report is going to give out. A similar system is being done for my other reports as well. In this case, let's pick up the production report since we picked up the dev report at start, but this is pretty much identical. I can choose to define bookmarks. Again, this is just to ensure that the set of bookmarks that we are working are being logged. Again, this is entirely user dependent. And now I'll run the system. So what's happening in the backend is quite simple. We're connecting to a very specific set of reports. If there were any filters or bookmarks that we had to dynamically apply, the application will apply that as well. And post the application, post the application of these set of reports, parameters, and filters, the PDF are generated dynamically. So this implies that even if you don't have a PDF generation system, the application handles that. And of course, then the comparison takes place. Once the comparison takes place, there are 2 distinct set of comparisons, and we will look at them in the result system itself. So while this particular system lays out, I'll quickly go back to the main stage. and discuss the next aspects that we're also going to discuss in the system, which is what regression is, because we won't be showcasing that in this particular tutorial. It's pretty similar to upgrade. In upgrade, you see we have two distinct nodes or two distinct connections. We're going to compare a report from connection A to another report from connection B. So these are two distinct reports that we're going to compare. But in regression, you're going to compare the same report against itself. I'll use an example to illustrate this better, but the main aspect here is that in regression, you basically compare a report against its previous version. You first benchmark it and use that as a source of truth. Of course, in upgrade, our source of truths are running against each other itself. So now the result has been finished and we see that yes, the application has run and we have run a visual comparison. In this case, starting with a textual aspect that, hey, there are a few aspects where our textual aspects are different between the reports. And of course, if you get into appearance, you see that there's a pixel to pixel comparison that's being done between both the reports. And you can see anything with regards to a graphical change between the reports. In this case, the main example that we use, and I must have used in demos as well, is of course alignment. Here, sum of sales by shift mode has shifted its alignment between center and left. And of course, if there was any other shift, as we see that the entire graph has also been altered a bit, and there are other aspects present, the application catches that. So that's the first aspect with regards to a PDF to PDF comparison. This is a basic use case. Of course, you can go ahead with much more complex use cases as well. Now let's quickly jump into Tableau upgrade, given that we need to work with that as well. And it's pretty similar in the exact same way. Once again, all you have to do is define the exact set of comparisons you're working with. In this case, both of my connections are the same, but you can apply the connections yourself as well. Once again, for a Tableau system, all I have to do is get into the exact set of projects I have access to, and I have a very similar set of reports present right there. I have a dev report and a production report. And once again, we are not connecting to the source of Tableau, we are connecting to the Tableau system itself. So I pick up report A. I believe it was a dev report. There we go. And now I'm going to add a different view, which is report B, which is going to be my production report. And once this particular set of report is loaded, you will notice that if there are any filters or if there are any parameters in the aspect, you can actually dynamically update them using the parameterization system in our application. This is a slightly complex use case that we can cover in our documentation properly, but the basic gist is that data flows have inherent parameters that you can define. And once you define them here, if there are any corresponding filters or reports within your, filters within your reports that you want to dynamically change for each and every system, you can do that as well. Let me just run a quick refresh just to speed up this process. There we go. So we have both our systems. And since we have a couple of filters here, just to illustrate the point, if I want to, I can actually change this set of filters that I'm working with. So here I'm differentiating the filters. And if I go back, you can see that, yes, I can parameterize the minimum dates and other aspects as well. In this case, for the sake of example, I'll bring everything back to normal. But again, we do want to ensure we are doing an apples to apples comparison here. And once again, we do the similar aspect as running. So I quickly skipped over a bit of a few minutes from the video to make sure it's shorter, but the basic gist is as follows: that yes, we have found a specific set of reports, and if there are any differences, we can catch that as well. Here, the main differences, of course, sales per ship mode versus sales for ship mode, and the absence of a very specific filter. Correspondingly, if we get into pixel to pixel comparisons, we see that the movement, there has been a movement of a few set of filters within our system, but no specific data set movement except for a few legends. And so the application has cached pixel to pixel comparisons and textual comparisons as well. So that was the first aspect with regards to regression and upgrade and regression. The next thing that we really want to touch base on is how do we pull data sets from our Tableau and Power BI systems. Let's start with Power BI first. Now here, we're going to treat Power BI as a source, and our main system is that, hey, we need to pick up a corresponding set of data sets, and these data sets are actually represented as visuals in our Power BI report, so we need to pull them. The first aspect, of course, is getting to these specific set of data sets. So here I'm going to pick up a very typical report within my system, and as you see, we have multiple graphs present here. Now, each of the visuals, now again, this is not limited to just bar graphs. It can work for pie charts, map data, or other aspects as well. And each visual actually has a corresponding data set associated with it. This data set is subject to change based on the filters, bookmarks, and other parameters you might apply in any specific BI tool. And so this is dynamically generated by the Power BI tool itself. To pull these data sets out, all we need to do is define what are the different data sets you want to work with. rename them if you want to define that, if you want to do that as well, and just run the system. Once again, the basics of the system remain the same. We're going to connect to the application. We're going to ask it to generate a very specific data sets and reports. And using the Power BI API itself, we're going to pull the data sets that were generated after said parameters and filters were applied. All right, and here we go. These are the data sets that the corresponding and were created from these corresponding visuals. And once again, this is not limited to bar graphs. You can do pie charts, you can do map data, any visual that is generated by Power BI. We can pull the data set that the visual uses. There's no limitation on that. And of course, this is after the filters and other aspects were applied. Now let's take a look at how we do the same for Tableau. The main difference between Power BI and Tableau here is while Power BI has them as visuals in the back end, of course, Tableau has works as basically workbooks or worksheets, basically. So if you're working with a very specific type of report, so in this case, we're working with just a single report, you will see that I'm working with specifically worksheets, and this is the data that those worksheets work with. But of course, if I go back to my set of systems and choose a slightly different report, let's go with a report. Let's go with a few that has multiple worksheets associated with them. So here we see there are two sets of graphs, and so the number of worksheets represent the same. So in this case, we're actually going to connect to those worksheets which have this specific data sets and pull them as well. Once again, it's just as simple as defining them, defining what data sets we want to pick up. And of course, if we want to, we can rename them as well. And the final step is to just run them. In the same way, the application is going to pull the same data sets, same as we've done for Power BI. Once again, the application, in fact, if I go into the application, you can actually see what the application is trying to do. It's trying to launch a Chromium browser. It's trying to authenticate itself. And once the authentication process is done, it's opening the report and downloading the datasets by directly connecting itself to the Tableau API system. And here we see the corresponding datasets are present. Once again, we do not connect to the source. We connect to the Tableau engine itself, ask it to generate these datasets after the application of specific reports, specific filters, parameters, slices, and other aspects, and then pull the corresponding datasets using APIs. So these are the basics of our application. Of course, upgrade, regression, and BI specific tools are a class of their own, which will devolve a very specific kind of use case. But of course, when you're pulling these datasets, you want to compare them against different use cases as well. Luckily, we have this covered in the documentation of our exercises, particularly its report to data comparisons for Tableau and Power BI. And they both follow a similar system, where after we pull a data set from our Power BI system or Tableau system, in this case, we have pulled in yearly income. We can pull the same from our SQL Server file or file-based system. In this case, we've picked up SQL Server and we've picked up our aggregation right out of the box from them customer. And then we run a comparison to see that, yes, there's been a mismatch. We have a similar exercise for Tableau as well. Okay, once again, we pick up the corresponding data sets from Tableau. The report we provide actually has an exception where we have to do a bit of pre-processing before we can use them as specific direct data sets. But once again, we see that Tableau has a complete mismatch as Power BI does have a bit of mismatching that we see. And finally, our final use cases, of course, once you have these data sets out, you want to apply rules on top of them. Here's where, once again, we ask the users to look into documentation or look into the sandbox documentation that we have provided. We have provided these specific set of exercises where if you want to validate data sets or Power BI reports across a set of rules, we encourage our users to use the data rule component, where all you have to do is define what the data set you want to work with is, and then you can easily define zero code or low code system based rules that can be parameterized, imported and exported as well. Again, use them to resolve your specific issues, but we do highly recommend that to follow the exercises that the application comes with, given that that's going to give you a full-fledged understanding on how the rules can be applied and what's the variety of rules you can work with as well. So that's the entire basis of the tutorial in the Power BI Validator. Of course, there are a few aspects that we have not covered so far, things such as pipelines. I'll quickly jump on them. All you have to do, a pipeline is basically where you combine your different set of test cases and other aspects. So all you have to do is define what are different data flows that you want to run. You can also explore the options for iteration, but a basic pipeline would be defining what data flow you would like to run. In this case, let's say Power BI report to data compare, and you want to follow it up, say with Power BI report to report compare. And all you have to do is define how you want to run this. So in this case, I want to run them in parallel. This is how I'll define them, and I'm good to go. And when I run this particular system, both of the corresponding test cases will run together. This is where in notification systems, this is where your Azure pipelines or other CI/CD tools are going to trigger specific pipelines and other aspects, but we'll leave that for an advanced class. So that's the basic tutorial done. Feel free to contact us in case you want to look into something specific. If there's a very niche use case you want to look into, we have a lot of case studies which look into very specific niche use cases. The primary one, of course, being that if you have a use case where you have Power BI reports, and if you have, or if you say in this case, you have Tableau reports, and if you have another SQL Server or file-based system, and instead of validating the entire report, you want to apply filters on the specific system, and you want to say validate the report on different combination of filters. We have a parameterization node just for that, and of course an integration node that will dynamically understand what parameters you want to work with and then run the test case except for different parameters each time. So a lot of things that we have not covered. This is just the basics, but if there's something you want to get a better understanding, feel free to raise a support ticket or get in touch with us directly. Thanks a lot for this. Hope this helps in understanding the product. Thank you.